Whisper of Ice and Fire. Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 4, The Spoils of War. We begin this episode with Jaime and Bronn seizing all of Highgarden's gold to pay back the Iron Bank after the end of the last episode. Following the death of Olenna of House Tyrell, and essentially the end of the Tyrell house itself. So all of the Lannister men, accompanied by Randall Tarly, Jaime, and Sir Bronn, collecting all of the gold in Highgarden. Bronn asks Jaime why his mood is suddenly sour when he just won a great battle. And of course we learned in the last episode that Olenna was the one who poisoned Joffrey, not Tyrion or Sansa. And she essentially spat back the mercy he showed into his own face. So we can sort of understand why he's not in the best mood. So Jaime orders Randall, Dickon and Bronn to seize the harvest from all the farms around the Reach in order to take it back to King's Landing and sort of stockpile all the food at King's Landing in case Daenerys tries to lay siege to the city and starve them out. It's a solid plan, if not pretty scary for the civilians of the Reach. So it's a short scene to open up the episode. We then catch up with Cersei, who is meeting the representative from the Iron Bank, who is finally happy to be being paid back by the crown, and actually offers to invest all this gold back into the crown now that they're being paid back, despite having not been, paid back in at least 5 seasons, so 5 to 6 years maybe. And then, of course, Robert's debt to the Iron Bank before that, even. So, I'm sure they like getting the interest payments from the crown, but they almost didn't get paid at all until right now, basically, so it seems like quite a risky venture. And, as Cersei puts it, the Iron Bank likes to gamble, but the representative is saying, no, we prefer not to call it gambling, we prefer to call it, investing and that kind of thing. I don't know, either way, it seems like a sort of a risky venture capital. And we sort of get a bit of a throwaway line that Cersei and Qyburn are looking into hiring the Golden Company from Essos, which is a band of sellswords that we might see next season, supporting the Lannister army. So I think there's a bit more lore about the Golden Company in the books, but I can't speak to that myself. But I think this is the first time we've heard about them in the show. So it's interesting that Cersei is sort of looking to hire them with this, the leftover gold that she had from paying back the Iron Bank, or from a potential new loan from the Iron Bank. So her army appears to only be growing. We then head to Winterfell, where Littlefinger is, for lack of a better term, conversing with Brienne. I don't really call it conversing when Littlefinger is talking. It's sludge and poison coming out of his mouth, so... Regardless, Littlefinger presents Brienne with the cat's paw dagger, the Valyrian steel dagger given to the assassin in the first season to try and kill Bran. And of course, Littlefinger then mentions Bran's mother Catelyn and how he would have stopped the dagger that took her life with his own heart. And I think I mentioned this previously, how Littlefinger can't seem to hold a conversation with anyone without mentioning his unrequited love for Catelyn Stark. And now I'm starting to wonder if it's like a character flaw or a writing flaw, honestly. Like, do the TV show writers just not have any idea what else Littlefinger can say apart from pining after his long-lost love, It seems like this season he's just either talked about his love for Catelyn or some vague, fake deep nonsense like fight every battle everywhere in your mind all at once. You know. So I have no clue what the hell is going on with Littlefinger anymore. And it's a shame because he really was quite the devious little villain. But now he's definitely sort of a shadow of his former self. So Bran asks if Littlefinger knows to whom the blade belongs, to which Littlefinger says, no, that very question started the War of the Five Kings. But previously Littlefinger told Catelyn that the blade belonged to Tyrion Lannister. And for someone who, tells lies so often, you would think he would keep the same lie going. It might not benefit him to sort of frame it on Tyrion anymore. But he doesn't know that Bran knows everything. So you would think he would try and carry on the lie that he's already told rather than sort of start a new one and risk getting caught out. Like, what if Catelyn had told Bran or anyone that Littlefinger had told her that the knife belonged to Tyrion, It seems pretty risky. But I guess that's what Littlefinger's about now, just lying upon lying upon lying. And, of course, he continues trying to weave his little trickster web, but Bran interrupts him with one of his own lines. Chaos is a ladder, and he stares him dead in the face, and he's just like, chaos is a ladder. And Littlefinger is visibly shaken by this, but honestly it's hard to believe that Littlefinger remembers saying that exact phrase 3 to 4 years ago. Unless it's like a personal mantra he repeats in his head to himself all the time. Which I guess is possible. He just walks around saying like, chaos is a ladder, where's the next ladder that I can climb, kind of thing. Because people who've rewatched the series recently might remember that line. And I definitely wouldn't have picked up on the line if I hadn't been reading the subreddit and they sort of called out that Bran repeated his own line back to him, which is why he was shaken. But I feel like I watched the whole series completely pretty recently, and if I had have not read on the subreddit that Bran repeated that line back to Littlefinger, it would have gone straight over my head. I would have been like, why is Littlefinger being all shaken? I would have just thought that he was shaken from Bran's sort of sassiness, But regardless, Bran is letting Littlefinger know, in his own subtle way, that he's seen all of Littlefinger's scheming. But Littlefinger doesn't know the extent of Bran's knowledge or his power. And he could easily overpower Bran the Cripple because, unless Bran walked into him, I guess, but I don't know, we haven't seen him walk into anyone who wasn't sort of susceptible to it, So someone strong-minded like Littlefinger could probably resist it. But, so this is kind of the only thing Bran can do right now to let Littlefinger know that he's onto him without outright saying, I know you're our enemy, because he would just kill him, immediately. But Mira enters and prevents any further conversation between Littlefinger and Bran, possibly sort of saving him from a bit of danger. And this interaction between Mira and Bran shows the extent to which Bran is removed from his previous life. He holds no sentimental value for Mira, and, the sacrifices of Summer, his direwolf, and Hodor, and Jojen, who died, I think, 2 seasons ago now, season 4, I believe, and Three-Eyed Raven. But the entire past and present of Westeros and Essos is all he concerns himself with, on a grand scale. Mira and Summer and Hodor are just little dots, in the whole history, the timeline of Westeros and Essos. I'm not really sure what planet it's supposed to be on, but yeah, basically, Bran's gone, Three-Eyed Raven is here to stay. And Mira puts it best, she just says, you died in that cave. She's on her way, she's basically leaving, and Bran just says, goodbye, see ya. And she's like, you don't want to say anything more than that, people died for you, and I carried you across the frozen wastes of the north. But no, it's the Three-Eyed Raven, and he has more important things to focus on now. So now that Mira is returning home, we might see some more scenes of her and her father, Howland Reed, who is actually the only person living who can verify Jon Snow's lineage firsthand. At the moment, the only person who might know is Bran, but he doesn't really have much weight to throw around behind what he's saying, because no one else can actually experience firsthand the visions he's seeing. And we actually get sort of another potential source in an upcoming episode that may be able to verify Jon's lineage, but Howland Reed is kind of the optimal choice right now. Although I think we've only seen him as young Howland Reed in a flashback, so it might be too late to introduce him, But we cut to Arya, who has been travelling for a whole episode, and finally arrives in Winterfell. And we get a scene that's sort of a throwback to Season 1, where guards in King's Landing also prevented Arya from continuing on her path, and there's guards in Winterfell that stop her from coming in now. And, this season is very much a parallel of earlier seasons, and I don't like saying that a lot. But there are times when they directly borrow from earlier seasons, including reusing entire lines sometimes for different characters, which I've previously mentioned that I'm not a huge fan of. I wish they were a bit more subtle. But I guess with so little time, subtlety's kind of gone out the window, And actually, Arya is finally back in Winterfell for the first time since Season 1, which was 6 seasons ago. And not only her, but the entire place has changed, so it's like very weird to think about, because we've sort of journeyed with Arya a lot and seen her all the time, and we've seen various occupants of Winterfell, but it's been a long time since we actually saw Arya in Winterfell. And it's a big moment for her. So the guards tell Sansa that Arya entered Winterfell and they can't find her and stuff. And Sansa knows exactly where she'll be, so she heads down to the crypts, where she finds Arya staring at the statue of their deceased father. And I hadn't actually noticed it until now, but Arya actually wears like the same hairstyle as Ned did before he died, like the sort of long-ish hair at the back and the kind of the bun thing going up here. And actually her garments kind of resemble his as well, like the sort of brown leather. So she's very much running with the whole family pride thing at the moment. But Arya and Sansa finally reunite, since I believe the closest they'd been since before now. I can't think of it exactly, but I'm assuming it was when Ned's head was removed. I think that's the closest that they've been physically to each other. It was very pleasing to have them speak cordially to each other for the first time in years, since they were constantly bickering in earlier seasons. And the whole death of Lady and Sansa never speaking out against Joffrey. So there's a bit of bad blood there, but it was very nice to have them conversing as grown adults and letting bygones be bygones, at least for now. But there was some awful phrasing in their reunion. Sansa says, I can't wait till Jon sees you, I remember the way he looked when he saw me walking towards him. His heart will stop when he sees you, Arya. It's very particular phrasing and not very common, I didn't think. So, it's a very, very weird way for her to say that. When he sees you, his heart will probably stop. I really hope that's not foreshadowing for another Jon death, because I don't think I would believe that Jon could die again now. Although I didn't see his first death coming. But yeah, I don't know, I just don't see him dying again now, unless it's for a very, very important reason. And I doubt it will be just after seeing Arya, And when Maisie smiles, Maisie is the actor for Arya. When she smiles in the most recent episodes, you can really see how Arya has grown into quite a pretty young woman, much like Hot Pie said in the crossroads scene earlier. And Arya mentions her list of people to kill, to which Sansa laughs nervously, and Arya joins her and brushes off the interaction. So I think Sansa was kind of just like, that's so weird. And Arya's like, oh yeah, no, it's not as grim as it seems, But, you know, it is as grim as it seems. It is. And Sansa lets Arya know that Bran is also in Winterfell. So Arya also reunites with Bran for the first time since Season 1, Episode 1 was the last time they saw each other, since Bran gets pushed out of the window, I believe, in that episode. But Arya and Sansa have already travelled to Winterfell. Not to Winterfell, to King's Landing. So yeah, since the very first episode of the show, this is the first time Bran and Arya are seeing each other. Which is just like a little fun fact, you know. He immediately tells her about his visions before they've barely spoken 2 words. And like I said in the previous episode, the Three-Eyed Raven is very boring. And it would probably be more interesting if he was still Bran, you know, and cared about the things he was seeing. And I guess it makes sense that he becomes this sort of all-seeing but never caring individual. But it doesn't mean I have to like the character, you know. But he gives Arya the Valyrian steel dagger that Littlefinger gifted him earlier. And Arya outright mentions that it's Valyrian steel twice, but I can't actually remember how Arya knows that it's Valyrian steel. So it'd be interesting to find that out again. She must have picked it up from somewhere, or maybe she can just recognize the fine quality of the blade or something, but yeah. And this event might be the first step in foiling Littlefinger's plot, as he wouldn't have accounted for Arya returning. Everyone sort of assumed she was dead or gone, and he wouldn't have expected Brienne to give the blade away to Arya. So it might be interesting to see how that kind of, you know, puts a stick in the wheel of Littlefinger's whatever he's plotting at the moment. But in all seriousness, what is Bran's purpose this season apart from literally just existing? We haven't seen a vision once this season. He hasn't given anyone any critical information. All he's done is show up, be rude to everyone, give Arya a blade, which I guess could be important. But anyone could have given her that blade. She could have acquired it, she could have stolen from Littlefinger. Honestly, he hasn't done anything this season apart from sit around and be kind of mopey. They may as well have just not have him written in this season, like they did with Season 5, I think. Until they need him, until they actually have something for him to do, you know? He's literally just rolled around in a wheelchair this season. And, I'm probably being pretty nitpicky, but I'm very tired of Bran being so important when I don't like the character or how the character is written. But the three Stark kids return inside the gates of Winterfell, and we sort of overhear a conversation between Podrick and Brienne. And it's a nice moment for Brienne seeing the 3 Stark children together, finally. And I think it's actually has the Stark theme sort of playing over the top. And, you know, she's seeing them together after swearing her vow to Catelyn in Season 3, I believe, and being rejected by both daughters. Since then, Sansa, I don't need your help, and Brienne sort of trying to kidnap Arya from the Hound, but Arya running away. And, so she's very happy to see that her vow has been sort of upheld after all these years. And she actually finally accepts Podrick calling her my lady, after seasons of rejecting being called a lady, possibly due to her never really having female strong role models until Arya and Sansa, honestly. So I think that's a pretty big character building moment for Brienne. Seeing these strong Stark women, and even though they're much younger and much smaller than she is, she sort of still idolizes them. Their resilience and their attitudes, you know, their can-do attitudes. And of course we get a little shot of Littlefinger brooding in the darkness, as usual over the Stark children. Always always plotting, always watching Wazowski. Then we catch up with Missandei and Daenerys and Jon and Davos over on Dragonstone, and then he joins Jon in the cave filled with dragon glass as they prepare to finally mine it. And it's kind of hard to believe that no one from Dany's troop had really explored the cave on Dragonstone until now, considering how long they've been there. And I'm assuming that none of them have explored it because of the way that Dany's in awe when she goes into it, so it's implying that she's never seen it before, you know. But it's like, why wouldn't you check out this giant cave in such a small island, you know? But Jon shows Dany the cave painting, depicting the first men and the children of the forest and the White Walkers. And he likens the alliance between the first men and the children of the forest as the alliance between the North and Dany's fleet, leading many people in the subreddit to jokingly believe that Jon was just furiously scribbling the paintings on the wall himself, like moments before Dany got there, in order to convince her. Which of course is impossible almost, but it's still amusing to think about. Like, he just kicks away a box of chalk. He's like, yeah, no, there was the children of the forest did this. It seems like it kind of works to convince Dany a bit, because she does actually agree to fight for him. She's, I will fight for you, I will fight for the North, as long as you bend the knee. So Jon, of course, retorts with, my people won't accept a southern ruler, not after everything they've been through and that kind of thing. And Dany's reply is, isn't their survival more important than your pride? Which I believe is the exact phrase that Jon spoke to Mance Rayder when he was attempting to bridge peace between the wildlings and Stannis. Back when Stannis was allowing the wildlings to enter Castle Black, as long as Mance Rayder swore, bent the knee to Stannis, which he didn't, and Mance died for it. Like, I just feel they can find different words, like even just looking it up in a thesaurus, to say these similar phrases instead of outright just ripping them from earlier seasons, because how many times have I said this, that they're making parallels, they're drawing parallels, and, exact phrase and exact line from earlier seasons. Like, at this point, how much of this season is actual original content, and how much of it is just fan fiction from earlier seasons, Which I think actually is a lot of people's biggest complaint about this season so far. And it could be that we have no more source material to go off, so everyone knows that the writer's just making it up. And they're probably assuming that a lot of the writing is based on sort of what the fans and the viewers want to see. So one of the biggest complaints is that this season feels a lot like fan fiction, and I don't know if I agree with that completely, mostly because I don't really read fan fiction, but I don't know, it definitely feels just too easy. Everything's going just as most people would put it, like as most TV shows would have it play out. There's no sort of big twists anymore that really sort of catch me by surprise. And that might be a result of me reading and researching these episodes and reading people's opinions and theories on subreddits and stuff. But the more likely explanation is that the TV writers just can't write on a deeper level as George R.R. Martin can with his own book series, But all of that aside, I still am, of course, enjoying this series. It's very fascinating to watch, and it makes for some fantastic viewing. But yeah, I just wish there was a bit more sort of originality to it, or at least different ways of phrasing lines that they've said before. So after Dany drops Jon's own line back in his face, they leave the cave to find Tyrion and Missandei, I believe, and Varys on the beach. And Tyrion delivers the bad news about the Unsullied being trapped at Casterly Rock, their fleet being burnt by Euron's fleet, and about Olenna being defeated and murdered. So of course she's furious at the loss of all her allies, and sort of takes it out on Tyrion, because it was his plan for the most part. and, actually begins questioning his alliance and his strategies. And in her anger, she bursts a plan to take her dragons and attack the Red Keep, but Tyrion insists it's not the correct plan. So she asks Jon for his counsel, and Jon agrees with Tyrion that if she attacks King's Landing with the dragons, she's essentially just another Cersei, just another tyrant bent on inflicting fear and death until she gets what she wants, and damage and pain, And this is something that Dany often struggles with. She wants to be a fair, kind, just ruler, and, someone that people can look up to, breaker of chains and all that. But when it's not getting her what she wants, and when she starts getting backed into a corner, she really shows the exact kind of person she truly is, like impatient and power hungry, and not afraid to use weapons and violence and fear to get what she wants. So, yeah, it's very important that she continues to have this sort of team keeping her level-headed and grounded, because, the Targaryen madness gene and stuff, it might be dormant in Dany, or it might not be there, or it might just be waiting, to burst out when she gets backed into a corner too much. So Jon says, you can't take the dragons to Winterfell. So Jon, says you can't take the dragons to the Red Keep, like too many people will die, it's too dangerous, you'll kill civilians. And you'll just be like Cersei, just a ruler born from fear and, despair. So it kind of leaves it open as to what Dany plans to do, but she definitely wants to get something done. But we head back to Winterfell to check up on Podrick and Brienne, who are sparring with training swords in the courtyard. And Pod actually seems to be slightly more capable a fighter, but is still constantly on the ground at the hands of Brienne. Until Arya interrupts and asks Brienne to spar because, in her words, no one else defeated the Hound, but you did. I want to spar with you. I want to fight with you. Or train, I think she says. And we viewers are treated with a very nicely choreographed fight sequence. There's a lot of water dancing and swordplay that she probably learned from Syrio Farrell in the first season, and of course the Braavosian fighters in her time in Essos. But it's actually the way she moves is very intricate and delicate, honestly, and it's very impressive. And Arya manages to hold her own against Brienne, despite using a thin, small blade, needle, and a dagger, which granted is Valyrian steel, but she doesn't seem to have a problem using those weapons against Brienne's training broadsword. So, we've seen Arya fight before and kill, but it's one of the first times she's actually had an extended, not one-sided duel, And it's really cool to see how far she's come in terms of her swordplay and her skill, and it's good to see that she can hold her own, because I have a feeling she'll be taking part in one war or another at some stage, and not just always being an assassin. No, she's going to have to go up against a foe, and this is sort of a glimpse into her skills at keeping herself alive with an actual sword, and not sort of getting the jump on someone with a dagger. And of course Littlefinger witnesses this duel and seems pretty rattled at exactly how adept she is at handling weapons, because she wasn't a part of his plan at all, and then out of nowhere here she is, and even worse, she can fight with daggers and swords and do cool matrix flippy things, so she's quickly becoming a serious threat to whatever his plan is that he's been cooking up. But it's back to Dragonstone, where we follow Jon and Davos walking along a small, stony path. And Davos gets some killer lines here, because Jon says, he asks Jon what he thinks. What do you think of her? Jon's like, think of who? And Davos goes, I think you know exactly who I mean. So Jon says, she has a good heart. And Davos replies, "A good heart. I've seen you staring at a good heart." Followed by Jon's, "We don't have time for this, like the Night King marches on us as we speak. How many men do we have in the north? 10,000 less." Davos replies, "Fewer." And Jon's like, "What?" And like that whole little interaction is just filled with like jokes and wisecracks. And honestly, it was like a little bit weird. It was just sort of a little comedic routine right in the middle of the episode. But that whole like 10,000 less and Davos fewer, that was like Stannis' old joke, his old bit that he used to do with Davos. Stannis used to say fewer when he would correct someone, because it's grammatically correct to say fewer than less in a lot of the situations that people were saying less. And Davos would always go, "What?" And Stannis would go, "Nothing." So I think there's like 2 instances of that in seasons 1 and 2, or 2 and 3. And it's probably one of my favourite jokes in this show, honestly, just the whole viewer thing. And now it's like, that torch is being carried on by Davos. On the other side of it, he finally understands the viewer thing. And we have a bit of sort of character development between Missandei and Jon Davos. They talk about how they chose Daenerys as their queen because they believe in her, they want her, all that kind of thing that we've heard before in terms of, Jon and Sansa and, the Knights of the Vale. These people are always just choosing their own leaders. So it's honestly like nothing special. But we actually get interrupted by the arrival of a single Greyjoy ship arriving at Dragonstone. So Theon and the Ironborn stumble ashore Dragonstone, and Theon turns around and is surprised to see Jon standing before him. And I'm not sure when these characters last met. I have a feeling it would have been a fair while ago. But Theon greets Jon pretty nervously, obviously aware of the strife and, well, outright betrayal that he caused to the Stark family. And in fact, he doesn't even flinch when Jon is aggressive and grabs him by the scruff of the neck. He probably honestly expected much worse, like a beatdown, or honestly to get killed probably. And again, I don't really know the extent to which Jon knows about Theon's betrayals and all the sort of bad things, mistakes he made. He does know that he saved Sansa, obviously, from Winterfell when Ramsay had it, because he mentions as much. But obviously he heard about, the whole sacking of Winterfell in the first place, I guess, so that's sort of why he doesn't like him. And betraying Robb instead of bringing back Ironborn fleets, going and sort of being rebirthed and siding with his father again. I guess he knows some of that. Because Jon, says, the only reason I'm not killing you right now is because what you've done for Sansa. So it's pretty tense. But I still feel so bad for Theon because you can see it in his face. Alfie Allen just does an outstanding job portraying the broken man. Just looking down and clenching his teeth, and you can see, his jaw just clenched because he knows he's done wrong, but he's always trying. He's trying so hard to redeem himself. The broken man. But he informs Davos and the others that Euron has taken Yara and that he's come to ask for Dany's help to get her back. But Jon reveals that Dany has left. So I guess she did make a decision after her earlier conversation on the beach with Jon and Tyrion. So in order to sort of bookcase this episode, we close out the show with a Jaime and Bronn and the Lannister soldiers scene. We catch up with them after successfully transporting all of Highgarden's gold back to King's Landing. So I guess this is sort of happening at the same time as the conversation between the Iron Bank rep and Cersei. So instead of being chronological, it's sort of happening at the same time. Unless they're just getting word that the gold arrived safely, which can make sense. So then, in conversation between the Tarlys and Jaime and Bronn, Jaime addresses Dickon Tarly as Rickon again, And of course he corrects him like, my name's Dickon. And Bronn is more than amused at hearing Dickon's true name, which is a bit more comic relief to this episode after the whole comedy act between Davos and Jon earlier. I sort of felt like Bronn was laughing a bit too hard because I didn't think the name Dickon was... Like, I obviously get it, it's Dick, it's funny, but I don't know, it was kind of a weird moment for me. Took me out of it a little bit. And Dickon kind of admits to Bronn and Jaime that fighting for the crown was hard since he knew some of the men he was killing. And, you know, of course, it smells because they in their words, shit themselves. And honestly, that's sort of one of the more important smaller lines from this series, because they don't often go into the intricacies of civil war, like fighting former allies. So I think that was an interesting perspective on the war. You know, he's like, we hunted with those men. I knew some of them, but they had to kill them. But before much else can be said, Bronn sort of stops the group and he's like, wait, do you hear that? And very, very gradually, this grumbling, thunderous noise begins to fill the plains where the Lannister soldiers are basically just kicking back. And it's the thundering hooves of Dany's Dothraki army signalling their assault, which is super intimidating. And, you know, it's kind of like, it sounds like thunder, and there's a storm coming for the Lannister army, or, you know, a stormborn, if you will. I thought that was pretty clever. But we finally have some more action in this series, and a real clash of armies, not like the Unsullied versus Casterly Rock from the previous episode, which was kind of just a montage. But we actually have a full-on, like, army versus army battle right now. And it was pretty badass. So Bronn insists that Jaime return to King's Landing, but Jaime assures them that they can hold off the Dothraki, as like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Dothraki screamers and archers and blood riders are filling the plains and charging directly towards the Lannister soldiers, which are scrambling to their feet to pick up shields and pikes and that kind of thing. Whereas moments before they were just relaxing and goofing off, you know. So they're very much caught with their pants down here. So yeah, Jaime assures him that they can hold off the army until Drogon actually screeches, and you know, his screech echoes around the plains, and just this look of utter horror and confusion just crosses Jaime's face. He's just like, what the hell was that? And then of course we see Dany riding Drogon into battle over the Dothraki army. And she gets very powerful Dracarys off, and Drogon just sears a bunch of Lannister soldiers to ashes, basically. And honestly, like, this upcoming battle was very nerve-wracking, because, like, every other skirmish that we've seen has usually had one clear enemy or bad guy that you don't want to win, and, like, the good guys that you do want to win, you don't want to be harmed. For, like, the Battle of the Bastards, obviously, nobody wants Ramsay to win. You know, Stannis versus the Wildlings, you care much more about Jon and Stannis than the Wildlings. And then, you know, the White Walkers versus the Wildlings, you want the Wildlings to win, because that's when they start to become sort of good guys. But this battle, you know, it's Dany and the Dothraki and the Dragons versus Jaime and Bronn and the Tarlys, who, I don't really like the Tarlys and couldn't care less if they died, but Jaime and Bronn we are actually pretty attached to, and we've seen that he's a good man doing the wrong things for the right reasons, you know, trying to save his family, trying to make the woman he loves safe and happy. So it was nerve-wracking because we didn't want there to be a clear victor, really. Like, who cares if all the red shirt Dothraki and Lannister soldiers die, but the whole time I was just like, please don't kill Jaime, please don't kill Bronn, please don't kill Drogon, please don't kill Dany, you know. So it was weird to be rooting for both sides. And then, you know, Drogon's constantly burning soldiers to ashes, and seeing the dragonfire burn them two piles of dust was definitely like a powerful move on Dany's part. Like imagine the blow to morale, seeing your former friends and allies just like a wisp of smoke blown away on the wind, and just their, melted armor in piles on the ground. So there was some very grim imagery here. We also get some cool imagery like the Dothraki archers perching atop their horses to fire their bows. Again, some pretty fantastic fight choreography in this episode. So Dany directs Drogon to burn the food wagons stolen from the Reach in order to weaken Cersei's position in the war to come and make sieging and starving them out possible again. So pretty good tactical choice there. I wonder if she burned many of her own Dothraki alive, because I can't imagine it would have been easy to sort of discern the difference between the two armies. I guess the Dothraki are on horses, and most of the Lannister soldiers weren't. But yeah, there's definitely some collateral damage in there, I feel. But there's not really much Jaime and Bronn can do. Jaime sort of orders his archers to fire on Drogon, but all the arrows just bounce off, and Bronn can literally just stand there and watch like, what the hell, like I'm not getting paid nearly enough to deal with a dragon, until Jaime orders him to man the Scorpion. So, Jaime's sort of controlling the troops, Bronn's going for the Scorpion, Drogon's flying around taking out key targets, the Dothraki are fighting the Lannister soldiers. A Dothraki fighter attacks Jaime with two of his, can't think of what the proper term is, but it's like a sickle blade with the curved blade. He goes at Jaime with two of those, but Dickon saves him. And Jaime was honestly struggling to hold his own against that dude, so he's pretty damn lucky. So maybe now he'll bother to get Dickon's name right, But Bronn rides for the Scorpion, and on the way he sort of, another Dothraki rider is, approaching him with his sickle sword thing, and Bronn just does the old whoosh, like flicks a dagger at him, which would have been a really slick move, but the Dothraki sort of deflects it with his, which would have been a really slick move, but the Dothraki sort of deflects it with his own sword, which is also pretty slick. A lot of cool moves in these fight scenes in this episode. But the Dothraki rider actually takes out Bronn's horse, cuts off its leg, which was kind of gross, and we get a pretty cool sort of point of view scene for Bronn, like a one cut or a one take, as he makes his way through the burning field towards the Scorpion. And it was actually really similar to Jon's long like one cut in the Battle of the Bastards, where the camera's sort of, it feels like it's hand mounted and it's like up close to him and it's backing off and stuff, and it's not showing tactical views, it's showing like nitty gritty up in your face views. And I really enjoy this film technique because it exaggerates the grittiness and the intensity of the fight, and it was cool to see Bronn get one, so it's not just reserved for main characters, But the Dothraki that was chasing Bronn, who killed his horse, gets impaled to a wall after Bronn fires Qyburn Scorpion, and it was very reminiscent of Grey Worm pinning the Lannister soldier to the wall in the previous episode. Like I said, they must have learned some new filming techniques or something, where they can pin people to walls, Then we see Tyrion arrive on scene and sort of overlooking the battle, and we can see that he does not enjoy watching the Lannister men butchered and burnt. And, although he might not be allied with them anymore, it's a similar situation to Dickon and the Tyrell army, where Tyrion probably knows a lot of those Lannister soldiers, and he's never been a fan of fighting in war. So even though technically his side is winning, he definitely doesn't like watching it and seeing sort of the bloodshed. He's always a strong proposer of the non-violent approach, which I kind of worry about, because in this show you kind of have to be violent, and killing them before they kill you is definitely a legitimate strategy. But we head back to the battle, and Bronn sort of launches a few rounds at Drogon, So Dany finally sees the scorpion in a clearing and decides to, go after that, destroy it so her dragons don't get hurt. And as I predicted earlier, the scorpion is pretty incapable of inflicting serious damage against the dragons. It's definitely being relied on too much and overhyped. I guess maybe if you had more than one at a battle. But actually, now that I think about it, why did they have the scorpion there? They couldn't have known that Dany would attack. They were I guess they have a bunch made, and that was just one of them. Because it wouldn't make sense to send your only dragon killing weapon out of the Red Keep if that's where the Queen is, so I'm assuming there's more than one. But he gets a bolt into Drogon's side, but it's sort of just an annoyance. It doesn't really seem to do any serious damage. And of course Drogon destroys the scorpion. And at least this scorpion. And yeah, like I predicted, Drogon just destroys the scorpion, just burns it and smashes it with his tail. So we're kind of assuming that Qyburn has more. And yeah, they might be dangerous in a situation where they have more than one scorpion at a battle. But even this one, it sort of got the dragon in the side, and it didn't really go in very far or do much damage. But that was sort of their last hope versus the dragons, so there's not really much left the Lannister soldiers can accomplish at this point. Jaime sort of notices a few spears, and Dany has by now landed to try and take the scorpion bolt out of Drogon's side. And Tyrion can see that Jaime is sort of waiting around looking at Dany and at the spears and at the dragon. And he begs Jaime to flee under his breath. He's like, "Flee, you idiot." But Jaime sees his chance at ending the war, so he picks up a spear and charges at Dany as fast as he can on his horse, while she's vulnerable and trying to pull out the scorpion bolt. And yeah, it's nice to see for Tyrion that despite being on opposite sides of the war, he still very much cares for his brother. That sort of brotherly relationship hasn't been quelled by an abusive father, or murdering that father, or murdering a lot of people, I guess. It's kind of a messed up family if you think about it. But yeah, he doesn't want to see Jaime harmed, and Jaime's doing the reckless thing. He believes he can end another war by striking down another Targaryen, much like when he killed the Mad King Aerys. But Drogon doesn't allow this. He launches a blast of dragonfire toward Jaime, just as Bronn knocks him off his horse into the waters below. And a lot of people had a problem with this ending because he's visibly sinking down into this darkness, so the water that they're in is pretty deep, but seconds ago his horse was running across it, so it's basically some sort of chasm that goes just shallow, Mariana Trench, apparently. I personally had no problem with it at the time I watched it, and after reading people's complaints I still didn't really care. I don't know, it was cool, it was interesting. It would be very dangerous in real life for him to drop that deeply into water with his heavy armor on, but I don't think they really care that much about realism in this show anymore. But that's the climax of episode 4. Definitely a lot more interesting than episode 3. A lot of people went wild for it. I thought it was better, but the fight scene still wasn't really much entertainment. And I think I might be honestly spoiled from the Battle of the Bastards, because that was a fantastic battle. And just, yeah, I don't think any sort of fight up until they actually take on the White Walkers for real will ever get my blood pumping as much as the Battle of the Bastards did. But regardless, it was nice to see some action again. A lot of the dialogue was amusing, even though it was maybe a little childish and out of place, a bit too on the nose. But some interesting things that came out of this episode are the Lannisters have now seen a dragon firsthand. We learned that the scorpion is as weak as was predicted, and overhyped to all hell. And it was, of course, very nice to see Dany getting something done again. You know, finally taking those steps and making plans and just making things happen, basically. So yeah, I think it was a much better episode than episode 3. I also feel it was a bit overhyped with the whole battle thing, because it was a good battle, but it wasn't that special. You know, it was sort of one-sided for the Dothrakis and the dragons. But still probably better than no fighting, I guess. But that about wraps up another episode of A Whisper of Ice and Fire. I hope you guys are enjoying these episodes, because I'm having a lot of fun making them. I love talking about Game of Thrones, and it kind of lessens the pain of having only a few episodes left this season, and then such a long wait for the next season, you know, so it sort of keeps me going, keeps me in the mood for Game of Thrones, so yeah. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode, and yeah, I hope to see you next time.